Hey, how you doing? This is Steve Sims. Welcome back to another episode of The Art of Making Things Happen, the podcast with Anthony Stephen Malone. Now, does that name sound familiar? It should be, because he's actually been on a podcast before, but this guy's been quite busy. Listen to his podcast and especially pay attention to his mindset. I'm not going to give this a big intro because you just need to listen to this guy. Make a cup of coffee, push play, and listen. Anthony, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me back on your show again.
Back on the show. My Lord. Right. So for anyone that has no idea what this guy's been up to, okay, he's the real Jason Bourne. He's the real Reacher. This guy is an action man. And you've got to listen to the other podcasts because I'm not going to dwell on that because you've been quite busy recently. And I didn't hear from you for a while. And then I got a message sent over to me by you going, I'm back now. By the way, I was inside for 6 months. And not just inside, overseas. What happened?
Well, yeah, right. What actually happened was, like many other military veterans out there, about 9-10 months ago, we saw what was happening in Afghanistan with the evacuation. And I was retired at that point in time. And I got some telephone calls from my former drivers, interpreters, and members of their families who were very concerned about their well-being in Afghanistan. So I was approached by multiple organizations, and I was heading up an evacuation team, and we went out there just as Kabul happened to fall and the evacuation, which obviously everyone's aware of that. I was out there for over nine months. The first 3 months over there, we were able to move over 400 families, vulnerable families, people, and children. We moved a lot of children as well to safe locations. Then I was with a colleague of mine. We were picked up as an absolute fluke because we have British passports. And then I became a hostage of the Taliban for 6 months in their underground interrogation center in Kabul. I can say me name now because obviously myself and the other 5 British nationals are actually out. All of us are safe and all of us are back home in the United Kingdom.
Now, was this a government British sanctioned trip that you could do?
No. We were getting
there was no official sanction or sign off for you and vets to actually go out there and do this. You did this off your own back.
Yeah, we did it off our back with a lot of help and support as well. We went over there because it didn't sit well with me and a lot of other veterans who are actually out there, that our interpreters and former drivers, these are people who have known for a long time, were ringing us up, and they felt as if, right or wrong, they felt as if their lives were in danger because the Taliban were taking over Kabul and Afghanistan. So obviously I made a command decision on that. I decided to get myself boots on the ground with other people in Afghanistan, in Kabul. We flew into Uzbekistan, then we took a 12-hour road trip over the border of Uzbekistan into Afghanistan and down to Kabul.
I'm trying to get in line with the mindset here. What you did from first step was put yourself in danger. You knew full well just flying over there, just not landing in there, but just flying over there. This wasn't sanctioned. You were there to do something that a lot of people knew to be highly dangerous. And it's not like you're unknown. You know, as you've been doing more podcasts and the book, you know, people are starting to know who you are and it's getting out more and more. So you're gaining quite a profile where a lot of the vets that do these kind of missions, hey, they want to be as quiet as possible. So you're walking in there with a target on your back. You could have easily turned around and gone, hey, I've done my time. I've done as good as I possibly can, but this is too dangerous. But you decided, no, you have to go and do it. And there was a drive and something that compelled you to put yourself in harm's way. And then, let's be blunt, you got locked up. Would you care to explain to us and kind of give us some kind of visualization of what it's like to be locked up for 6 months? How were you treated?
Well, the reason why I went over there, I couldn't turn around to friends of mine who had their families and young children who were stranded in Kabul. They had no way out. And we didn't know which way it was going to go at this point. This was 9-10 months ago. It could have went well, it could have went very bad. In hindsight, it wasn't that bad, but we didn't know at the time if these people were going to be hunted down or even executed. So it was a decision I made. It wasn't a light decision that I made. No. I spoke to my family and said, if I don't do this and something happens to some of these families and children that I personally know, I'm not going to be able to deal with that well. So I said, I need to do this. I will be very careful. We went out, we done the task in hand, and we got them out. We got all of them out that we actually knew, but it expanded exponentially. An example, we went into one meeting to meet a family of 4 people. We came out of that meeting with 74 British nationals, passport holders who needed to get out of the country. That's one example.
How do you do that,
though? With a lot of planning and a great deal of just rolling up your sleeves and let's get this done. Don't forget, we were not sanctioned. We were self-funding 100%, and we only went in there to get a few families out, which we actually did. We got them out. Then I made the command decision to stay there and get as many families out as we could, because we weren't responsible per se, but I felt responsible. I'm a former British paratrooper. I'm a military veteran, and I am a patriot. And maybe sometimes I should stand down, but this was one of those occasions where standing down was not an option. If you can stand up and save lives, being a vet, you take it, you do it, you do what needs to be done to get the job done. And we got the children to safety. Yes, it came at quite a price. I ended up spending 190 days in the Taliban underground interrogation center in Kabul. Not exactly a hotel. I went the other way. Instead of being quiet about who I am, I went the other way, because I thought going not public in the press, but going public with the Taliban, that might give me a little bit of an umbrella, because I am quite high profile and I had friends in the Taliban as well. We were not picked up in a planned operation or anything. We weren't even arrested. We were just asked to accompany some members of the Taliban to their intelligence headquarters to answer some questions. So we weren't handcuffed, arrested. There was no gunfights or anything, which everyone was expecting. We didn't have any of that. We were polite and courteous, and they were polite and courteous to us. We were accompanied to NDS headquarters in Kabul into a holding cell, and we thought this might take a couple of hours to sort out, because we had the right paperwork, the passport, the passes, entry visas in our passport as well. We had everything. We even had a letter of the Chamber of Commerce stating that we were there. We were in Afghanistan to help Afghanistan and the people of Afghanistan. So we weren't doing anything wrong. I was not armed when we were picked up either. I just want to make that very important point. I was there as a humanitarian. And a couple of hours turned into a couple of weeks, and then it got very political. We were used as a political pawn, for want of a better word. Then we were released 6 months later, after 8 countries helped us to get released, and your president actually released a statement from the White House requesting that the 5 British nationals being held, well, it was 6 in total British nationals and 1 American, your president requested the Taliban to release us immediately because we were there on humanitarian grounds. All of that helped and put a little bit of pressure on, and some cooler heads prevailed. Then we all were released to England and back again. So a 3-month little adventure turned into a 9-month adventure.
Wow. So as an entrepreneur, and I'm going to flip it into the entrepreneurial mindset, we always try to handle things. We always try to plan ahead. We always try to have a route that we're going to take in order to get what we want. You walked into a room to get 4 people out and ended up getting 70 plus out on one meeting. What happens to your head when you're suddenly made aware that, hey, the original challenge or the original scope has now changed? What makes you not grab your head and go, oh my God, I'd only planned for 4. What do I do from here? What are your methodical stepping stones to come to a decision for what you need to do that's best for the situation at hand?
Well, I think it's very important that people understand. Doesn't matter how good you are at planning, preparation, you can only do so much. No plan ever survives first contact with the enemy. So when you walk into a war zone, that the best laid plans are going to go out of the window. All you can do at that point is adapt, overcome the problems one day at a time, and try and keep everyone as safe as we can at that moment in time. Working 23 hours a day, though, for weeks on end, it is challenging. But you've got to think about what the consequences are. If we make a mistake, it could cost somebody their life, including me. So we don't make them. We step back, we look at it as cool-headedly as we can, and we make decisions for the greater good of everyone that is actually there. The fact I was picked up, don't have a problem with that. The fact we got everybody out, I am happy about that. And senior members of the Taliban shook my hand on the way out and said, well, actually, we can't tell you officially this, but unofficially, we're very proud of what you did. You saved Afghan lives as well.
Wow. How is it over there now?
It is the Taliban government. I know there's a lot of experts out there. I don't class myself as an expert. All I have is 22 years on and off experience in Afghanistan. So I go from experience of what I've seen, not what I've read in a report or seen on the television. The Taliban government is fractured. It's fractured beyond belief. It's gone back to a tribal kind of establishment. The last time I saw something like that was in 1999. So it's not a cohesive government per se, what we would call a cohesive government. The Taliban is more like an umbrella, which all these groups come under. So I was given a bit of a hard time by what I will refer to as a rogue element within the Taliban, and this particular person had a major problem with me being a former British soldier. So me and him didn't get on. Turned out he was actually my interrogator as well. So things got a bit interesting at that point. But yeah, cooler heads prevailed up, and his boss and his boss's boss the head of Afghan intelligence. We actually sat down, had a cup of tea, and had some pleasant conversations after the initial heart attack that everyone had when they found out I was actually in there.
Now, people can hear this from the original podcast, but you infiltrated the Taliban originally. So was there some kind of resentment when you came back, because you were the guy that got into the inner sanctum and actually you made your way all the way up to the top pecking order and authority? And again, for anyone interested, you've got to listen to the other podcast. I'm not going to waste time on this. But were there any Taliban in there that saw you as a infiltrator and therefore had resentment to you because of that? Because you're quite high profile on that.
Hell yeah, there was a couple that were not happy that I was there, but the senior people, head of Afghan intelligence and senior members of the Taliban government, told me whatever happened before the 15th of August 2021, it is a closed chapter. That chapter has now been closed, moved to one side. They do not have a problem with that. Head of Afghan intelligence also told me he was quite proud of the fact that I had stepped up and helped save Afghan lives as well as the lives of American soldiers and British soldiers. But that chapter was closed because he knew I had been retired for 10 years or more, and I'd come back purely as a humanitarian to help, and he knew it. He also knew the people. We had some mutual friends in Afghanistan. Some of them were Taliban, some of them were from the Haqqani network as well, people who I met in prison over there. But we are enemies, to want of a better word, but the war is now over. As I told the senior members of the Taliban, the war's over. Now you've got the move from being an insurgency group to a government. You need to govern your country and you are responsible for the people in it. So you're not an insurgency anymore, you're government, and you've got to act like that. I said a lot of people are going to find it very difficult to talk to you publicly at the moment. I says, but time will tell. I said, but remember, you're being watched and you need international support. So I said, you need to think about the element within the Taliban, the government, or under the umbrella of. I said, you need to control the people under your command. I said, there's a lot of different tribal elements there. And it's very difficult for the Taliban and I would say the educated. I met some Taliban in there that I never knew until I was in there on this occasion from foreign affairs. Very educated, very sharp, very aware of economics, politics internationally as well. Their English is perfect, written and spoken. These are senior members who work behind the scenes. The West needs to engage with them. Those are the people who can bring change to Afghanistan. Because I spoke to the senior leadership over there while I was obviously being held as a hostage, and I said, you've got an opportunity, but you need to put your weapons down, grab a pen, get to the table, and have meetings, talk to people. It might take time, but I said a lot can be achieved by talking. And I said, you've got an opportunity now. It's coming up now. Next month is the 1 year anniversary of American troops being pulled out of Afghanistan. It's been a year, okay? And the Taliban have got an opportunity here. It can either go, it's at a crossroads. It can either go very bad or it can go fairly well, and it will take time. But I want everyone to ask yourself this question. Can we afford not to talk to the Taliban? Forget who they are, forget the history. That chapter is now closed. Can we afford not to talk to them, not recognize them, not at this moment in time, but that can happen if it's meant to happen. But can we afford not to? Because if we don't open up a dialogue, a proper dialogue, and talk to the government in Kabul and the right people in Kabul, then Afghanistan could very easily fall into a safe haven for a lot of terrorist organizations. At the moment, the Taliban are fighting ISIS-K and other extremist elements in Afghanistan. So we need to think about that. Is it wise that we just take a step back, not get involved? Then maybe military action might be needed in the future. Because my personal opinion is, if we don't get involved in help within 6 months to another year, there will be civil war in Afghanistan, and the country will be split in two. You'll have the north, then you'll have the south. The south will be all the hardliners and extremists. The north will be the more progressive, educated people. So people have got to really think about that. I know there's a lot of advisors, and there will be over the coming weeks coming on the news. I wouldn't listen to a lot of these advisors. Like I said, I'm not going from something I've actually read. I'm going from experience. I have sat as a hostage and had some very interesting conversations with senior people within the Taliban government. And a lot of people are going to be very surprised to hear that. I am not pro-Taliban. I am pro-Afghanistan. And I think we should help the people there. And anyone who knows me knows that.
I think one of the problems is lack of education. A lot of people think that the Taliban and ISIS are actually the same. Okay, so there's a lot of that kind of broad brushstroke. They're all as bad as each other, and there's that kind of element. And fundamentally, as human beings, we reject change. We're not very good. We like to think we're constantly developing, but we're actually shit at changing. And every major change, whether it be the light bulb, the telephone, the car, has been met with people going, "Oh, that's a terrible idea. That'll never work." Even the internet. Now we're faced with a culture and people that we don't always relate to. We certainly don't know enough about. So it's easier for us to reject them and not be able to accept another person's culture. I'm really proud that you've made it very clear. Let's just have a conversation. Let's talk. Is there still a lot of people over there trying to get out of Afghanistan for fear?
Yes.
They are still trying to get out.
There is thousands of people, not hundreds, thousands. There's over 700 British nationals, passport holders, who are trying to get out of Afghanistan. And there is a large number of Americans as well trying to get out of Afghanistan.
If they've got a passport, why can't they?
There is an amnesty, and that amnesty is very fragile. Anybody can go to the airport, get a ticket, and fly out. But if you have worked for the former regime, they will most probably pull you and question you. Okay? Now, there was a lot of corruption in the former regime. A lot of it. That's one of the key factors why the government fell and collapsed so quickly, was down to the corruption. And the Taliban have got a list of people. They have a database of people they want to speak to. There's obviously some personal vendettas out there as well. There always is going to be a little bit of bloodletting whenever a new government comes in. So it's not that straightforward for someone to get a ticket, go to the airport, and leave Afghanistan. It could be quite dangerous at times. There is some Taliban who want people to just leave, but there's also, I refer to it as a rogue element, because the people at the top can't control the people at the bottom. So
Yeah.
people have got to be a little bit cautious of that. Don't get me wrong. When I was first pulled and kept as a hostage, they beat the hell out of me. Okay, purely because I was a former British soldier and I wasn't having any of it when they were asking me some very uneducated questions, is the way I would put it. So they got a bit of attitude from me, which obviously didn't really help me at that time. But I just wanted to put the ground rules down. You beat me all you want, you ain't going to get anything. End of. If you want to have a conversation, put the kettle on. Let's have a cup of tea. But I told them from day one, week one, I'll never betray my country, my family, or my friends. So all that is off the board. Will not speak about any of that. Then after a while, they thought, well, he's taken everything with thrown at him. So I was like, yeah.
That is crazy. So what's next for you? Because again, you can't walk into a place like that on the quiet. You basically got a flag. People know who you are. So what's next for you? I know that you've got a book. I know that you do actually go out and speak, which is not two things someone that's trying to do undercover operations does. So what's next for you?
Well, don't forget, I was retired 2010, 2011.
Yeah, you've been
I
out
was
of the
out of
game
all
for a
it.
while.
Yeah. I've been out of it for 12 years, but it was, I wasn't meant to go. People don't come out of it, then go in again. You don't do it. Your life expectancy, if you go back in, is pretty small.
Yeah.
But hey, we did what we did. We went and squared it away. What am I doing next? I'm writing another book on my experiences because I think a lot of people can learn about your mindset, how you approach this, how you deal with this as well. Don't get me wrong. There was one teller came down and said, you're looking at 40 years in prison or I'm going to hang you. And I went, not a problem. Put the kettle on. So I think a lot of people can actually learn a lot from myself and a couple of the other guys that were held as well. So like I said, if you keep a positive mindset, which even the other hostages couldn't understand how I could be so upbeat the day after we're being told we're all going to get executed. I mean, but I have got a bit of a dark sense of humour. So sometimes you've just got to kind of pick everyone up from being a bit down and say, come on, gentlemen, this we can deal with all of this. I mean, I said they're not going to execute us. I didn't know that, but it was like I just had to pick everyone up, like, mate. I mean, you got to see, so they're obviously just trying to rattle our cages and all that. And the guys who were with me, the other British nationals, went, is there ever going to be a time when you're going to be concerned? And I said, yeah, but it's not yet, though.
Wow. And I can imagine people will be watching that. If people want to follow you and find out what ridiculous things you're getting up to, or more importantly, when the next book comes out, what's the best way for them to follow you?
The best way, LinkedIn, Anthony Stephen Malone. I'm also on Facebook, Anthony Stephen Malone, Rogue Warrior. Rogue Warrior is my call sign from 10 years ago. Turns out it's my call sign at the moment as well. Yeah, and that's basically it. But I just hope that people can actually learn from my experience. And always remember, if you're having a bad day, there's other people out there that are having a worse day. So all you do is take one day at a time, crack on with it, try and find the positive. There's always a little glimmer of hope there, even on the darkest day, because I've just spent like 6 months in an underground Taliban interrogation center, and believe me, if I can survive that, anyone can survive anything out there. So always remember, upbeat, moving forward at all times.
That's incredible. Anthony Stephen Malone is on LinkedIn. He's on Facebook, Rogue Warrior. Google this guy, follow him, get his book. Now, you've already got a book out now. What is that one? I know we mentioned it in the last podcast, but what's your current book called? And do you have a name for your new book yet?
I do. My original book is Honor Bound Rogue Warrior Part 1, which was Afghanistan. Then Honor Bound Rogue Warrior Part 2, which was Iraq, Syria, Saudi Arabia. So it would be like keeping it on about Rogue Warrior Part 3.
There you go. That shouldn't be too hard. Anthony, you're just an inspiration. I love your mindset. I love the fact that there are people that are not willing to let things go. And for all of us out there that maybe think twice while we're thinking twice, you're running to the line. So, Anthony, thank you so much for you, for the people you represent, for those people that are allowing us to sleep safely at night. And thank you so much for doing this podcast.
Steve, it's been an absolute pleasure being on your show again. Keep up the good work, and everyone stay safe.
See you later.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Hey, I hope you liked that episode of the Art of Making Things Happen podcast. And remember, these are done for you. If you like them, subscribe, share them around. But if you don't like them, send me an email to ask@stevedsims.com and you can tell me what I need to do to make this the most dynamic podcast you listen to. Anyway, make sure whatever you learned from the last podcast, you actually do something with. Without action, it's just a bunch of people blowing air. Have a good time. Until next time. Bye.